Hey everyone, and welcome back to another lovely episode of Slay with Zay. And I am your trans tutor. Now, on this episode, we're going to be talking about gender versus sexuality or sexual orientation. Now, oftentimes these two get confused, conflated, and all switched up and mixed up. And that's because we're a part of all the same community, the LGBTQAI plus community. And we're going to talk about all of those today. Now, let's get into the differences between gender and sexuality and the whole LGBTQIA plus community. Let's go. Okay, let's start off with the basics. Since this is going to be about Trans 101, we should figure out how trans fits into the LGBTQIA plus community. Now, I'm sure you're sitting there wondering, just like, that's a lot of stuff to know. But like many things in life, there are layers and layers and layers of things that we have to know and understand in order to progress and be better people. So this is one of the things that we're going to be discussing today. So let's start with, again, what gender is. So gender is going to be a social construct that is designated and given to you, assigned to you at birth based upon your biological sex. And we've already deconstructed what gender is back on the previous episodes. So if you don't know what gender is by now, you might want to go back and do some more homework. I'll wait. I gotta watch y'all. I'll wait. Work. Okay, so now let's talk about sexuality and sexual orientation. Very different thing. So, sexuality, sexual orientation is going to basically be who you are attracted to. So, no matter how you identify as a person, no matter what your gender is, your sexual orientation, sexual identity is going to be its own separate category. Okay? Alright, so let's have a conversation about the LGBTQIA plus community, otherwise known as the alphabet people. We've got a cool gangster name now. So, let's talk about each letter, and we'll figure out at the end why they are all clumped together, why gender identity and sexual orientations are all put together. We'll talk about that towards the end. Okay, so let's start with L, which is going to be for lesbian. Okay, so lesbians are women who are attracted to sexually, romantically, emotionally towards other women. Okay, it does not mean that she doesn't think that men are not attractive or they're not handsome. She's just not romantically, sexually, or emotionally attracted to them on a high enough level to want to be in a relationship with them, date or marry or the like. And that's a normal thing to do. Okay? Lesbians. Now, some notable lesbians that you might be familiar with are Ellen DeGeneres, Queen Latifah, and Young M.A. Those are notable lesbians you may be familiar with. So let's go on to the next letter, which is going to be G. Okay, now that we have the L out of the way, let's go on to the G. And so the G represents gay. And, you know, despite it being happy and joyful and all those kind of things, gay is equivalent to lesbian, but just for men instead. So gay in the LGBT plus community means that there is a man who is sexually, romantically, and emotionally attracted to other men. Again, it does not mean that they don't think that other women are sexy or anything like that, but they are strictly attracted to other men. Okay? So, notable gay men in the world are Billy Porter, Ricky Martin, and Sean Hayes. Okay? Alright, let's go on to the next letter, which is B for bisexual. Alright, now that we've talked about the L and the G, we can talk about the B, which is bisexuality. So, in contrast with the first two, bisexuality is a little bit more fluid. It can move a little bit more. Still kind of rigid, but a little bit more flow. So, unlike the first two, L and G, which is lesbian and gay, those are homosexual identities, which means that they are strictly attracted to the same gender. So, a woman with another woman, lesbian only. Gay man and gay man only. Those are rigid homosexual identities. However, when we're talking about bisexuality, it doesn't matter which gender they prefer. So we're going to strictly talk about the binary, the spectrum we talked about a few episodes ago. So, a man can be bisexual, which means that he's attracted to both men and women equally, romantically, emotionally, spiritually. Either one. Doesn't matter. Just because he dates a man doesn't make him gay. If he dates a woman, it doesn't make him straight. He's still bisexual because he likes both equally. And the same thing for women. If there was a woman who wanted to date a woman, and she also wanted to date a man because she's romantically, emotionally, and spiritually attracted to them, that makes her bisexual. Just because she dates a woman doesn't make her a lesbian. Just because she dates a man doesn't make her straight. The rules are a little bit more loose, but not as loose as they could be. So this is for gender that is the opposite, but also the same. Not too much nuance, but a little bit more. Okay? Some notable bisexual people are Frank Ocean and Halsey. Two notable bisexual people. So, let's get on to the one we love the most. Just kidding. At least on this channel, we love it the most. Which is T, which stands for transgender. Let's go. Now we are at the T. And so, the T is actually transgender, which is what this whole series is about. And how transgender people interact with the world around them. So, transgender is actually the first letter in the LGBT. The T is the first one that is going to be different than the ones that came before it. L, G, and B are all about sexual orientation and sexual identity, whom you're attracted to. So L, lesbian, solely attracted from woman to woman. Gay man, attracted solely from man to man. And then bisexual, which we just discussed, is a man attracted to men and women. And a woman who could be attracted to other women and a man. So that's what bisexuality is. But that has nothing to do with their gender identity, which is where transgender comes in. Now, we already talked about transgender in the very first episode, which you should have seen by now. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. You're back? Great. So, the first episode we discussed how your trans identity is created and how it's separate from your biological sex. So, when you're born, you are given a gender identity based upon your biological sex. And I won't go into all of it, I won't regurgitate it all. But if you're assigned male at birth and you don't feel that works for you and you transition into feminineness, into womanhood, you become a woman. That's transgender woman. Transgender man is you're assigned female at birth, and then you transition from female over to masculine, so you become a man. Okay? Note how that has nothing to do with who you are attracted to. That is solely about who you are as a person and how you wish to interact with the world. That's the difference. Okay? Now, your gender and your sexuality are two separate things, as I just said. But, you know, a transgender woman like myself can be a lesbian. If I'm a woman and I'm attracted to another woman, if she's cisgender or if she's transgender, that would make me a lesbian because I'm a woman attracted to other women. Or if there's a trans man who's attracted to men and to women, that would make him bisexual. Now, they don't go together. They can work together, but they don't go together. Identity for gender and identity for sexuality do not go exactly together. Work together, but they are not exactly the same. Some transgender people that are notable, that you may be familiar with, are Janet Mock, or Chaz Bono, or Laverne Cox, or T.S. Madison. Okay, or Teak Milan. Those are some examples of transgender people, right? Next. All right, moving right along, we are now at the Q, LGBTQ. And so the Q in the alphabet, people, stands for queer or questioning. Now, questioning may be a little skeptical for some people, but you kind of have to let people explore and understand who they are. And that's the beauty of the word queer. That's the beauty of this whole letter, this whole section. So, queer can embody a couple of different things. It can encompass your gender identity. It can also encompass your sexual identity. Or it can be a hodgepodge of those. That's the luxury of the word queer, which, again, you know, it's a couple of different things. It's not strict, it's not limiting. It allows it a little bit more access, a little bit more freedom in how you identify and how you move through the world. Okay? So, for example, your sexual identity can be queer, which means that you're attracted to people just because you're attracted to people. It could be their energy, it could be how they look, how they smell, how they sound, whatever. That's up for that person to understand and figure out. And then you can also do it with your gender identity, with the way that you present yourself to the world, your own gender expression. So, for example, people who dress a little bit more femininely, wear dresses or skirts or makeup, but they were assigned male at birth, or people who were assigned female at birth who dress a little bit more masculine with like boots and Timbs and button-down shirts and stuff like that. They may dress a little bit more masculine in their presentation. So those can be queer people. You don't want to select what someone's identity is for them. They'll tell you what it is. I'm a queer person. This is what I like. We also use queer as a big umbrella term which we've reclaimed, you know, so people won't, you know, try to use it in a derogatory way. So we've reclaimed it in a way to make it like more positive. So you may hear people say in lieu of LGBTQAI+, they may just say the queer community. Okay? Now, we also have questioning, which basically covers people who are potentially in the closet and trying to figure out and or understand who they are sexually and who they are gender identity-wise. You know, we have to give people grace and room to understand and figure out who they are. We don't want to take them out of one box and put them right in another box. That defeats the purpose. Allow them to explore and understand who they are. So, some notable queer people that you may know are Jonathan Van Ness, Kalani, Janelle Monáe, and E.J. Johnson. So, let's move on to the next letter, shan't we? Okay, LGBTQ. Next is I. There we go. So I is a little bit more involved, I would say. Not in a bad way, just involved. You have to do a lot of research to understand the nuances of this category in the alphabet community. So I stands for intersex. And so intersex people are people who are born with a specific set of chromosomes that makes them a little bit different from people who are not. For example, if you are assigned male at birth, it's believed for you to be one carrying an X and a Y chromosome. And if you are assigned female at birth, it's believed for you to be carrying an X and another X chromosome. Okay? That's what it's believed to be, but that's basic 8th grade biology. Science is so much more vast and involved in that they don't understand everything that's going on. So, for example, people who are intersex may have a different combination of these things. So they may have 2 X's and a Y. Who knows what the extra X does or what the Y does or whatever. It could also affect how they show up, physically, how their body may show up. Or they could have 2 Y's and an X or something there, you know. There's probably plenty of combinations, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know all the answers. But their genetics, their chromosomes are created in that fashion, and then their bodies may reflect those things. So we know when we add a Y to something, there's chances are you're probably going to be born with a penis. But that may not always be the case. And that's where intersex people fall. They may have a penis, but they may have a enlarged clitoris, and they may have a vagina as well, or gonads, or testes, or ovaries, or some combination of all those sexual characteristic traits. They may have breasts. They may not. They may have small breasts. All of these things are determined by their chromosomes, which is why the idea of being a trans person kind of goes in tandem with this. If your brain chemistry tells you you're one thing and your body can completely create something different, you know that you can potentially have this scientific moment on your hands. Intersex people are valid in that, where their chromosomes have created this, and now what do we do with that? Are they a man? Are they a woman? That's up for them to figure out and decide how their brain chemistry works and how they want their body to reflect. This is also a gender identity that can be tied in with the other ones like transness or even queerness. So, I don't know any notable intersex people. A little bit of Google research will be able to tell you who they are if they're letting us be known. But let's move on to the next letter. Can I get an L? Can I get a G? Can I get a B? Can I get a T? Can I get a Q? Can I get an I? And can I get an A? Yeah, of course. You're going along with it. Of course you were. So, next in the LGBTQAI plus community is the A. And so the A is a little bit ambiguous as well, but it can reflect two different things. Similar to kind of how queer kind of reflects two different things, or Q reflects two different things, queer and questioning. A kind of does the same thing with gender and sexuality. So on the sexuality front, we have asexuality, which is essentially someone who is not really into having sex. They're not attracted to people in that regard. You know, they're also known as ace. So they may or may not have like this desire to have sex with people. They may have a certain level of romanticism that they prefer to do instead. There are a variety of different ways which people can interact with someone in a romantic way that doesn't involve sex. But I'm not an asexual person, so I'm not the best person to, inquire about these things. This is why research is so important. There's only so much that one person can tell you. You have to be able to go out and listen to other people and find out what they believe and how they identify and how it all works with them in their world. Okay? So, asexuality, I tend to think of it as people who just don't enjoy sex very much, which is feasible. And then people who enjoy other parts of sex or romanticism or things like that. Also in the A category, along with asexuality, we have agender. And so agender people are people who don't believe that their gender aligns with their designated biological sex, such as trans people, but they don't believe that their gender is on the spectrum at all. And we talked about the gender spectrum on the first episode. So again, man is here or woman is here or vice versa, whatever these 2 points are. But the spectrum moves along this way. And so people who are cisgender stay in their place. People who are transgender move across the spectrum from one side to the other. People who are agender are not on this spectrum at all. Their gender can't be identified. They don't feel comfortable in either one of the spectrums, and that's okay. So, you have to let people identify how they please. That's why you ask people their pronouns and introduce yourself with their pronouns. They can still use he, she, her, him pronouns or whatever pronouns they prefer, but sometimes they use they or them, or even more extravagant ones like Z or Zane or whatever. You have to ask people and respect people. That's the bottom line. So A stands for agender or asexuality. Okay? Now let's move on to the big haul, the plus. LGBTQIA plus. Now, I know it can seem a little bit excessive for us to have all these letters and all these identities, but we are human beings. We like to compartmentalize things, which means that we like to put things in categories. This person has long hair. This person has short hair. This person has blue eyes. This person has green eyes. This person is black. This person is Latinx. This person is short. This person is tall. We love to categorize stuff. So this is no different. So this may be a lot to interpret and to understand, but you need to also rationalize that people are going to show up in various ways on this earth. Not everyone's going to be exactly the same way. Assimilation doesn't always work, and it hasn't worked because people are too different. So you have to let people be who they are and understand that you fit a certain role in this world, and so do they. Okay? Now, the plus in LGBTQIA+ stands for the rest of the community that has varying gender identities and sexualities. Now, their gender identity that could very well be something like genderqueer or something that's non-binary, anything along those lines. Or they could be a demigirl or a demiboy. Their gender identity can vary. And again, that's the crux of the queer community, is that there's variables, there's different things. You have to understand people and do research and be knowledgeable. And along the sexuality line, you can have people who are pansexual or demisexual or, scaliosexual. Or they could be genophilias, something like that. You have to look up all those words. They exist, they're real, and they have true definitions. And not that you have to have a memory bank of all these words and things like that, but it's imperative for you to be able to pick up this information and understand it the best that you absolutely can. Just ignoring it doesn't mean that it's not real, and it doesn't mean it's going to go away. Okay? So that's the plus part of it. The unspoken part of the community that's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more finite. But they still fit under the queer umbrella as a whole. Their identity as far as gender may not match the one that they were assigned at birth, and their sexuality can be fluid. And this is all in contrast to the easy and simple idea of heterosexuality and cisgender. That's the most common, most original idea that they want us to believe, but it's not the only option. Okay? Let's get to the end of it. Alright, we have extensively studied on this episode the LGBTQIA+ community and how gender and sexuality are two different things. Let's just briefly review one more time. So, gender is the way that you wish to interact with your world based upon your biological sex. You may stick with it or you may move away from it. There's plenty of intersections that you can stand at that go in tandem with your sexual identity or sexual orientation, who you're attracted to, okay? Now, the easiest way to remember all of this is gender is who you are. That's who you are. Man, woman, non-binary, genderqueer, and the like. And then who you are going to bed with is your sexuality. Who you're attracted to, who you're, being nasty with, lesbian, gay, queer, bisexual, pansexual. There's lots of different options. Look at them, understand them, get them involved in your vocabulary. Language evolves. Language changes over time, and you have to be with it. Okay? So, we are at the end of this episode. Gender versus sexuality. Join me again next week for another beautiful episode of Slay with Zay. And I will see you all next time. Love you from your trans tutor.